Hi, Andrew. I wanted to start off by saying thank you for letting me respond to your essay. You had a lot of really interesting ideas in your analysis, and I just appreciated getting to think about different parts of the essay and videos I hadn't really thought about in my own analysis. So I wanted to start off with your idea about how I just thought it was interesting because I presented this within my essay as well. The idea that these extremely influential philosophers have had lasting impacts on philosophy and politics. I think it's really interesting to see that these ideas are still so applicable today. I think it's interesting because it's like I don't necessarily think where these ideas that I have within my society now come from, but as we're able to study this, we're getting to study a little bit of history along with the idea of philosophy. So I thought it was interesting how you pointed out how long these ideas have been present for and how they're still applicable to our lives now. So I just think it's interesting to see that it lasted so long and is still applicable now. So I appreciated you pointing that out within your analysis. Another thing that I thought was really interesting was your statement about how you thought Rousseau's ideas were too optimistic because of his romantic view. Like, I hadn't really thought about it like this. I thought that it was just him developing a greater sense of his own consciousness and kind of figuring out along the way that these were the arts and the education and all of these things were super important to him. But after reading your ideas and your response to why you thought he was too optimistic, I think I came to the conclusion that it's this idea that it's exactly what the people want, but it's too dramatic of a change to fully just switch from what they were doing to his ideal sense of society. So after reading more of your analysis, I kind of agree with you, is that I think that the ideas were too optimistic for the time because they weren't realistic. But I think that they're what we see at points within our society now. So I don't think it was so optimistic that it wouldn't be able to be implemented into society. I just think that his romantic view at that point in time was not necessarily ideal and not necessarily realistic. But I appreciate you pointing it out because I hadn't really thought about it. I just thought that his ideas were influential, but didn't think about how they could be interpreted then versus how they're interpreted through my eyes now. So I appreciated getting to hear about that. You mentioned within your essay, and you said the Romantic movement was beneficial or something along the lines of that. I don't know. I was a little bit not confused, but I was kind of like, well, it was a good idea, but it hasn't been super influential. But then you started talking more about Locke and talking about his ideas and how it relates to politics. So I was able to further understand that the Romantic movement was incredibly influential because that idea that we're able to still see how many impacts those ideas that came from those philosophers have on today's society. So I appreciated you pointing that out because I thought it was interesting because I was a little unclear on the idea of why the Romantic movement was so influential, but it's mostly because of that idea that its impact on politics. So I appreciated that. I also appreciated how you pointed out the idea that kind of we're seeing throughout all of the newer philosophers as we come towards modern philosophy, is this idea of going further away from acceptance and tolerance of the church to individual thinking. So I thought that was really interesting that you were able to point that out again, because I think it's really important to see that these people are starting to stray further away from just the accepted ideals and starting to think for themselves. And in sense with that was what you talked about, how Locke's ideas about blank canvases and how experiences make us us. I thought that was really interesting. That definitely resonated with me because I think that a lot of who I am comes from all of the experiences that I've had and how I go about answering the big questions within my life that help me develop a sense of self and a sense of wisdom have to do with the experiences that I've had as an individual. So I appreciated you pointing that out because I didn't really make that connection within my own analysis. So I really appreciated that. And yeah, I definitely think that you pointed out a lot of really good analysis about how most philosophical ideas were revolutionary within that time of the Romanticism, the Romantic movement, not Romanticism, and how they're still applicable today. But I appreciated your analysis. Thanks.